The good mail, the straight talk. I'm joined by the unconventional economist, Leith Van Onselen. G'day, mates.
G'day, Bill. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. We're missing you at the Ekka here, but next best thing, we've got you on the phone. Look, it's been a wild couple of weeks. First, we had inflation data that gave many people hope that a rate cut was on the cards in the future. But then a tumultuous day on Wall Street last week had everyone fearing a recession. And it appears the stock market's beginning to recover. What is the current outlook?
Yeah, look, it was definitely a wild ride last week. So what basically kicked it off is that the US markets, and which drives up global markets, has gone up massively on technology stocks. So this whole AI boom, that sort of thing. Let's say, NVIDIA, which is basically akin to the, if you imagine during the gold rush, the store that sells the shovels to the people who are doing the gold rush. That's basically what NVIDIA is. NVIDIA makes computer chips and that sort of thing. They rocketed in value. Microsoft's gone up. All the tech stocks rocketed through the moon. And basically, we got a few, underwhelming profit results. And then that sort of got everyone a little bit nervous that they're overvalued. So that led to a sell-off. And then we got the US jobs report last week, which was worse than everyone expected. The unemployment rate jumped up a bit. And then obviously we've got all the ructions around the US elections, which is just a, sort of negative for the market. So that kind of led to a bit of a sell-off around the world. And, usually when the US markets sell off, everywhere else follows as a lead. And, obviously in Australia, we weren't immune. So the stock market fell about 6% last week, but it's since recovered about 3% this week. So it's got given back about half the gains. I think it was just really, those three factors which drove it rather than anything necessarily fundamental.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good to know, because I was caught up with the Olympics all the last couple of weeks, so all this stuff sort of slipped under the radar a bit, so that's good to hear. Hey, look, the wage growth data dropped yesterday. Keen to get your thoughts on that. Treasurer Jim Chalmers was pretty quick to paint it all as good news, but I've read other reports stating the opposite, but it's not the case, is it? It's not all good news.
No, it's actually pretty bad news. So, yeah, of course, our illustrious treasurer was out there trying to, put a bow on it and trying to sell it as good.
Yeah,
the reason why I tried to sell
dress it up.
Was good. Was he said basically, quote, we've hit 4 from 4, meaning we've had at least 4% wage growth for 4 straight quarters, which is true. But problem is you got to factor in inflation, Jim. And in fact, real wages actually fell for 2 consecutive quarters. So they did bounce a little bit last year, at the end of last year, but not by much. But now they're falling again. So Australia's real wages are now tracking 7.2% below their June 2020 peak, and they're now tracking at 2010 levels. So that's once you adjust inflation. And what that means, Bill, is that we've basically given up 14 years of wage gains. So we're back to where we were in 2010. And it's even worse than that, because last week the Australian Bureau of Statistics released its cost of living index. And what that does is it breaks up cost of living by different types of households. And the ones that, most of us care about, and you and I obviously care about, is what's happening to employee households. So those are households where you have someone who works, and their cost of living rose by 6.2% in the year to June versus wage growth of 4.1%. So clearly, if you're a household with someone working, you've gone backwards even further than what the wage and CPI data tells you. So I don't know why Jim Chalmers is crowing here. We've given up 14 years of wage gains, and it's even worse when you factor in, the cost of living if you're an employee household.
And I was reading productivity. Where does productivity fit in the scheme of all this as well? I was reading a bit about that in conjunction with these numbers.
Yeah, look, Australia's productivity is pretty woeful at the moment, and the main reason for it is because most of our jobs are being created by government-aligned areas, so mostly through the NDIS. So basically, the private sector economy, or they would call it the market economy, is what economists call it, basically generated almost zero jobs growth last year. Whereas the government-related sector, the non-market sector, created just about all the jobs growth. And that was mostly through the NDIS, healthcare, social assistance, etc. And the problem with it is, historically, the government-aligned sectors have experienced far lower productivity growth than the market sector. So the more that the economy pivots towards being sort of government-type jobs or government-aligned jobs, it means we're probably going to have less productivity. And that's a bit of a concern going forward.
I'm here at the Ekka, of course, as I mentioned. I'm surrounded by farmers. There's lots of chefs, there's bakers, there's entertainers from regional Queensland, lots of people from regional Queensland. We read in the Courier Mail today that 2 in 5 people in regional communities are suffering financial difficulties. Does the government need to do a little bit more beyond the energy rebates and all the other little goodies they're giving away to help those in the country who are doing it a little bit tough?
Yeah, well, I think number one, first of all, it's got to deliver us cheap energy. So not try and paper over the cracks with subsidies and those sorts of things. It actually needs to fix the energy market because, as I said previously, East Coast Australia is the only place in the world that exports a ton of gas overseas, mostly to China and Japan.
I listened to one of your reports this morning, and it made me angry about what's happening with the gas. I know we've talked about it before, but gee whiz.
It is insane. So basically, Australians are left paying some of the highest, gas prices in the world, despite the fact we export over 70% of it on the East Coast, and that therefore means your electricity prices are high because gas is used as the firming power, which means that when your renewables, when you don't have enough renewables, which is most of the time, when the wind's not blowing or the sun's not shining enough, you have to use gas as a backup. But when you make that backup super expensive, it pushes up your electricity price, and that's basically what happened. And that then ricochets across every single business in the country. So if you're a farmer or you run some sort of factory or whatever, and you need cheapish energy to be competitive, and if you make that expensive, you're no longer competitive, and that's effectively the problem that Australia's got, whereby we've turned what should be a natural competitive advantage of cheap energy because we have so much energy, especially in Queensland. You are an energy superpower up there. You've got gas and you've got tons of coal, and yet somehow we've magically managed to create a situation where energy cost is actually a disadvantage. And it makes no sense. Can you imagine a Saudi Arabian filling up their car with petrol and paying $2 a litre?
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen. They fill up for about 30 cents. But we've got that situation with our energy whereby we are swimming in the stuff, yet we sell it cheaper overseas and we pay at home, and we create these cost of living and inflation pressures at home, which then makes us uncompetitive across the board. So those are the sorts of things the government should be doing, rather than trying to throw subsidies at it to cover it up, or trying to, save the manufacturing sector by throwing $20-odd billion into its, future made, trying to pick winners. It should just deliver us cheap energy, and that'll make us competitive in a lot of areas.
So the gas we're exporting to Japan and other Asian countries, so they've got a surplus of it, and they're selling it at a profit, making money off it, while we're paying through the nose for it here.
Yeah, absolutely. And to make matters worse, Bill, Madeleine King, who's our resources minister, basically shut down talk of domestic gas reservation last month, and she said that, quote, we can't do it because we, quote, turn the lights off in countries that depend on Australia's gas for their energy security, even though we export more gas than they need. Well, it's like, hang on, Madeleine, you're Australian. You're an Australian leader, a political leader. Shouldn't you be looking after Australians first?
Yeah, who you're working for.
That's it. I mean, you are turning the lights off in Australia, but instead of turning the lights off elsewhere, which you wouldn't even do anyway because you're selling too much. And the ridiculous thing about it, Bill, is Madeleine King has previously praised Western Australia's gas reservation policy, which has delivered Western Australians cheap gas and electricity. So if you can praise Western Australia's gas reservation policy, shouldn't we copy that policy on the East Coast, I would have thought?
They're not kicking a lot of goals, are they, the Albanese federal government?
Sadly not. They're basically tripping over their own shoelaces in a whole bunch of areas. And obviously, as you're acutely aware, in Queensland, the rental crisis there, you have 10 cities opening up in your own Premier's electorate. And a lot of that is due to the federal government's unbelievably high immigration. So, the Albanese government's first federal budget in October 2022 tipped that we'd have 470,000 net overseas migration in the first 2 years. Instead, we got 980,000.
Yeah.
And there is primarily why we have a rental crisis, because we literally have an extra nearly 500,000 people landed above what they budgeted for. And we just didn't create enough houses for them. We can't. And as a result, we have people sleeping in tents. We've got rents going through the roof, people being forced into group housing, financial stress, all these sorts of things. And that was delivered to you by the Albanese government. And then now they're completely stuffing up energy, which is driving up our costs left, right and centre. And the solution is to dish out subsidies for rent, subsidies for energy, which is then paid for through our income taxes, and rather than solving the underlying problems.
Yeah, look, that video you put on social media is a really good one for anyone who wants to understand it or and learn a bit more about it. If they want to have a look at that one, where do they go to find that, Leith?
Yeah, so it's on my YouTube channel. It's at Leithvo, at Leithvo. I've done some explainer videos on the energy market, etc. And there's one on there which I think it's called Anthony Albanese Swindles Australians on energy. And it basically explains this whole energy crisis in a nutshell. And I've also done one on housing as well. So, yeah, look, it's an insane situation. We've got a lot of our pain is being self-inflicted, and it's been self-inflicted by political leaders who seem to care about, the welfare of people in other countries over their own constituents.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thanks for having a chat with us, mate. Appreciate it again.
Yeah, cheers, Phil. Anytime.
Leith Van Onselen, the unconventional economist, and you could also probably track down some info through his website, Macro Business. There's some fantastic articles and links to videos that'll explain it all perfectly, as he said.